funny.
I know. Eric's in here quack attacking already. We're live on a Tuesday. Hope y'all enjoyed your Memorial Day weekend. Hope you had a good time with the family yesterday as we allow some people to trickle in. It's just Jay and I today holding down the fort. Jay, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Ty. Thanks for of course bringing me in as usual. I always enjoy a good fun conversation. We're going to make the magic happen.
Yeah, Eric's in here spreading his Oregon propaganda, his green wave in here. That's good to see, man. Always love to see y'all's fan support. But you know, the more I look around, it seems like a lot of people are really in that kind of slump time where they think there's not a whole lot to talk about. And
Yes.
brother in Christ, that's just not the case. I did a video earlier today. You and I have talked about it. We
Mhm.
talked about this on the stream on Friday. You and I really got deep into the idea. And I actually said on stream Friday, I'm going to make a video about this. I've decided. And that was why this year in particular is huge for USC. I have three reasons I'm going to give you. Then I want to hear from you, and we'll ping pong back and forth on this. My first reason is if you look around the landscape of college football, how many teams that were one game away or reasonably a game or two away from the college football playoffs, how many of them return a quarterback? Not only do you return a quarterback, you return Caleb Williams. Now, I grant USC fans that are listening, quarterback recruiting and quarterback play has never been Lincoln Riley's problem. So I have every reason to believe that there will still be really good quarterback play behind Caleb Williams. The question is, will it be Caleb Williams? What we saw him do last year was spectacular. Won the Heisman Trophy. Jay, you and I had talked about it. His freshman year was a display of supreme athleticism, and I wanted to see the technique, the reading of a defense, and as the year went on, year two, it was on display that he was absolutely developing all of those things. I can't wait to see what he does year three. The second reason this year is so big is Alex Grinch, right? This defense was not good last year. And if we really go back, we were talking in the green room about the USC defense. Nobody in their right mind is going to question USC's ceiling based on the offense. If you're questioning USC's ceiling based on the offense, you're asking the wrong question. You need to be questioning the defense. I told you that I did a little bit of a dive into Alex Grinch defenses, and I'm going to take you back to 2015 when he took over as the defensive coordinator for Washington State. Now, I'm not real privy to the Washington State defense at 2015. I watched a game, but I'd have to really go back and do some research. Someone commented saying there was another coach on that staff really responsible for some early changes in the Washington State. But regardless, 2015, the defense he inherited, they finished 74th in the nation. 2016, they go to 50th. 2017, 59th. But that's a little bit misleading on that last one, that 59th, because in several statistical categories, they improved. In several statistical categories, they were a better defense, a stronger defense, and by all accords, look to be trending in the right direction. Here's what worries me, Jay. This is the part that worries me. In 2018, he took over Ohio State. Now, the year prior, Ohio State was manned defensively by Greg Schiano, and Greg Schiano fielded a top 10 defense. Or I'm sorry, a top 15 defense coming in at number 15, I think.
Yep.
Alex Grinch takes over as co-defensive coordinator with Greg Schiano. That defense drops from top 15 to 52nd in the nation. What's worse is the year after the defensive coordinators left, that defense was top 10. So you had a problem. You changed what you thought was the problem, and your defense increased 42 slots. That's not great. When we look at 2019, they come in 64th ranked at Oklahoma. We know what that was. The next year, they went to 29th. And this is when Oklahoma fans got really excited about what the future could be. 2021 comes around and the defense, it crumbles, comes to 60th. I'm going to tell you what really concerns me, Jay, before I get to point number 3 and then pass you the floor. When we look at this, every year from 2018 on, he's had the benefit of having a top 15 offense. Every single year from 2018 on, Alex Grinch has had the benefit of a top 15 offense and has only produced a top 30 defense one time. This gets me into my final point, the move to the Big Ten. The Big Ten style of play, run heavy. And if we really start diving into that Alex Grinch defense, what did they grade one of the lowest in consistently in Oklahoma and Ohio State, being able to stop runs up the middle, specifically in power sets?
Yep.
That's the Big Ten. That is the offensive style of Big Ten. So I package this all together to say if USC is going to do it, it's got to be this year. Caleb Williams, presumably it's his last year there. He looks to be the #1 quarterback and #1 player off the board. Though there are talented quarterbacks, Miller, Moss, Malachi Nelson, are they Caleb? Caleb is Superman. He is spectacular. I'm not saying you have to have that, but Jay, you have to have that if you're not going to have a top 30 defense. You do. This is where USC is such an interesting team to me because I am fired up for the Trojans. I'm really excited for what they're going to do, but there is a really big question, and it's that defense for me. And I think 2023 is a key year. I tell you all that. What's your first reaction?
My first reaction is that you did your homework.
I was really intrigued.
And I say that specifically because that was the stuff that Sooner fans always pointed out about the issues with Grinch. He has more of a speed defense, running people in and out the field. And their biggest goal was, and the biggest success measure he had was getting a certain amount of turnovers would lead to X amount of wins. That was always the rationale by his defense. If you can get me this many turnovers in a season, we'll have 9 wins, we'll have 10 wins, etc., so on and so forth. The only reason why that can borderline work is when you have elite offensive play, elite offensive line play, and elite skills position play, as in your corners on top of your wide receivers. Now, this is what the problem runs into with everything with the Grinch setup is this. The focus on that speed does not stop that interior run game. Like you mentioned, like you have to have really big offensive linemen that can push through and stuff other teams. And you are spot on because that is where the Big Ten is. The Big Ten has always been a smash mouth in the trenches type of teams. All of them have been that way. That's why Iowa can grind out weird wins and stuff. And you see that same thing from like Wisconsin, and you get that from Illinois. You know, they've always been smash mouth, grind type schools. Minnesota, and the ones that have always come up at the cream of the crop, they come up from the top. It's always been Ohio State and Michigan. And then occasionally Michigan State will sprinkle their way in there, and Penn State also, is because they still get the upper echelon athletes to go on top of that smash mouth setup of offense and defense. And so for Oklahoma, having Joe Moore award-winning offensive lines really covered a lot of stuff that was going on the other side of the field. Now, I'm going to say this. The secondary was never as bad as advertised, right? For Oklahoma in the Grinch years. They weren't. The secondaries actually were solid enough. The problem was they were on the field for too long. And as we've talked about ad nauseum on here is if you've got your corners on the field for 7 to 8 seconds per play, they're going to get toasted because at a certain point, the play's over. It's just ad-libbing. And a lot of the times, it's kind of hard to ad-lib or stop an ad-lib when you're in the secondary and you're watching out for particular things. That is where the struggle comes into play. So I'm curious to see where this goes long-term for them, but I think the Bear Alexander pickup does help because it gives you a big guy in the middle that can help stop some runs. Now, you can't do that with one guy, though. You're going to need multiples. You're going to need more of those. You have to keep doing them. And then your linebacker play has to be elite. Luckily, they had some of that here at Oklahoma, but no, USC, the biggest thing they're going to have to focus on, which they're doing right now, is really bringing in those elite defensive linemen and then bringing in some elite linebacker play. Secondary will be fine, but it's all about getting enough pressure to where these plays can be done within about 5 seconds. Most quarterbacks are throwing it within 2 to 3 seconds. That's the NFL standard. So they're trying to replicate that. If you're not getting those passes in out of that quarterback's hand within 2 to 3 seconds, defensively, you're going to struggle long term, especially when you have a quarterback like Caleb Williams who can ad-lib so well. And he's so dangerous with not only his legs, but also with his arm. He's proven it. That's why I got the Heisman. So,
yeah, it's actually funny you say that. In the video I did earlier, I actually almost pulled a Deadpool and broke the fourth wall, right? And asked a question. And it was, seriously, if you're a defensive coordinator, how do you account for Caleb? Seriously, like I'm interested. Do you blitz and risk him escaping the pocket? Because sure, you might say, okay, well, this guy's got the arm to hit most blades of grass on this football field. He's got a
Right.
big arm, right? So he can touch us from anywhere. Do I get him outside the pocket? Well, okay, if you do that, congratulations, you've now unlocked step 2. Step 2 is now everybody in your secondary has to be so disciplined, because one mistake and he'll just hang out at the line of scrimmage and run east and west. Bryce Young does this. We talked about Bryce being a magician. Caleb did it a lot, where they're running east and west, not to go north and south, but hoping you make a mistake and they'll pop it over your head. The problem and the difference between Bryce and Caleb, one, Caleb's bigger and he's more physical, right? So Caleb, he'll look at it and be like, okay, I am going to take off. Where Bryce, I won't say he was averse to the run, but he was very much, well, I'm going to pass first. Caleb is a 50-50 cat. You don't know what's coming, and he has the ability to hurt you. Slap, I want to be very clear here, because you're right. This is year 2. And that's why, before we go any further, I do want to be completely fair here. It's tough for me to totally judge Grinch for this past year at USC because he didn't inherit anything. But Slap, that's also why I gave a sample size larger than the one USC year, because I don't think it's fair to point to 1 year at USC with a team that was not good and say, it can't be done. I think that the best argument is that Ohio State year, but then we also have to acknowledge people grow in their professions. This is a big year. Jay, to your point, you talk about the defensive line being huge, and I could not. Yes, Eric, I think you can. And that's why I focus so much from Ohio State to OU was my main point, because he got to grow the OU defenses, right? The Ohio State was still 1 year, but the reason why I do think that there is a conversation to be had, it's because of the way the defense was the year before he got there and the state it was in when he left, where that 1 year he was there, it dropped like 40 spots, then instantly became a top 15 defense again when he and Greg Schiano were no longer there. So from Ohio State to OU, I think is a really fair sample size to really jump into, because the offenses were fantastic. Jay, your point. He needs a good offense. The only reason I'm not diving super heavy into Washington State is the highest offense they had was 18th. Other than that, it was 48th and 50th.
And to go to your point with the Washington State, I mean, who was the head coach / offensive coordinator there? Mike Leach.
Yeah, the Pirate.
So he had the Pirate, RIP. He had a air raid heavy offense that was just not as quick as the way that Riley does things, but very fast and built on speed, which can be very successful in the PAC, which is why I don't discount them winning the PAC or potentially winning the PAC. The problem is Utah is a lot more physical in comparison. They are way more physical than USC, and we saw that this season. 2 games, they were way more physical in comparison. As USC would have that lead and get it to grow, and then Utah would just pound their way back every time. What it reminded me of, especially that conference championship game, reminded me of the Georgia OU game at the Rose Bowl. And being there physically, I was so disgusted that it felt like Riley was playing not to lose instead of going out there and stepping on the gas on Georgia. You'll hear me say this forever for the rest of my life. That was OU's national championship season. That was the 1 year that I think they could have matched Bama better. And that was the 1 year they should have just continued to destroy Georgia. You're up 31-17 at the half, and you're easily moving the ball. You take the ball out of your Heisman Trophy winner's hands, and you don't keep pushing the gas. You take field goals when you should go for it on 4th and 2. It felt like you were playing not to lose rather than playing to win against a team that you got to beat. That's what I'm wondering to see if Riley learned his lesson from that when they go, if they do make because they have a very good chance to make the playoff this year. No doubt about it. And if they make the playoff this year and they go against one of these SEC schools, will they have the mindset of putting their foot on that gas and running through them for as long as possible and forcing this SEC school to really throw the ball like crazy?
Do you want to know why I think the answer is yes this year? And I don't know, but if I'm going to guess, and then I do want to talk about Truth's comment here, Truth, because I agree with you, and there's a point I have. Really excited to dive into this. The reason why I think this year the answer could be yes while I like Austin James, while I like Raleek Brown, while I like some of the running backs they have right now, I don't know who's going to be that bell cow where Travis Dye, man, you want to talk about an undervalued running back in college football last year? Travis Dye was so good. Now, the reason why I bring that point up, Jay, is because if my mind is foreseeing how this will happen, and it probably isn't, let's be completely honest here. I'm probably wrong, but if you get into a position against an SEC team and you can't just say, okay, we're going to go very safe, we're just going to run the ball, you have to keep it in Caleb's hands. And I think if you're going to do that, you might as well keep an aggressive mindset. In theory, that's my theory. Now, to truths, you have to cover deep and have a fast spy. I agree, and that's why I'm so interested in the development between Caleb's sophomore and junior year, because if he develops like that automatic read the defense, dump off, I'm fine with taking 5 yards per pop until I soften you up enough to where you can't stand that. Oh my goodness, college football's in trouble. Offensively, that is. I'm still so many questions about the defense, but I think you get my point in what I'm trying to say.
Yes, I
Truth.
got you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now it's interesting you talk about Utah because I do agree with you, Jay, that I think USC is in a really good spot to get to the playoffs. And when we dive into Utah, do you want to know why I'm so excited for that game this year? Dalton Kincaid is no longer with the Utes. Tight end got drafted to the NFL. He was the Utes' leading receiver at the tight end position. He was a mismatch. He was huge for that Utah offense. While I know Cam Rising comes back, and that's big, Kyle Whittingham's still there, very disciplined. That's a loss, man. I think Oregon will be better, though. But I do agree that the Pac-12 is going to be so interesting. It's what happens after that. Dave Aranda shut Riley. Yeah, I mean, but Dave Aranda's Dave Aranda.
Yeah, I can't. There's certain coaches that when you hear the name, you hear the name. You know who they are. Now, this point on here about Oregon State giving them hell.
Yes.
Oregon State's going to be good this year. I like DJU. I think that they can do it. Cordy, you make a good point here about Dan Lanning on top of with Oregon State as well as with Dan Lanning being a great defensive mind. The question has been for Oregon is getting the right bodies to do the job and get the job done. We'll see this season. This will be the season of truth for me because it gave Oregon a chance to not only get quote unquote a class and a half. We'll say a class and a half of players and the transfers that he really wants to leverage into his system.
That's fair.
We'll see what that looks like.
Oregon is interesting to me this year because of the loss of Kenny Dillingham to Arizona State, having to replace an offensive coordinator. And we saw what he did with Bo Nix last year. I mean, that was a bit different Bo Nix.
Yeah. Yeah. As much as we talk about Bo Picks, he did definitely.
No, that was not Bo Picks. Bo Picks was not seen in Eugene. That was Bo Nix. And it's crazy, man. Whenever we go back to Auburn, goodness gracious, you want to talk about someone when he was focused, balling, but the problem was the inconsistencies. Well, we saw what Kenny Dillingham and Dan Lanning were able to do with him. But this is a point you and I have been saying for a while. People clown on the Pac-12 because of what they've been for so long. But then this year and last year in particular, you stop and think and you're like, oh, wait a minute. Utah is going to be pretty darn good. I think Oregon's going to be pretty darn good. Washington was pretty darn good last year. USC, pretty darn good. I mean, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun in the Pac-12 this year.
Yeah, it's true. That's very true.
Aranda's one. Yeah, Weston. There is a recipe to stopping Riley. It's just about being able to keep Caleb where he's at. Because to me, Caleb takes Riley's offense, and if he unlocks that next level this year, he can take Riley's offense to the next level because of his ability. And whether that's more on Riley's offense or more on Caleb Williams being a spectacular talent, that's not for me to decide. But Bo Nix has a 72% completion. Jeez Louise.
That's huge for last season. That's just huge in general. That's huge.
Mark says, fight on, Trojans. Hey, Mark, I don't blame you at all for being excited for your Trojans. I mean, if I was a USC fan, I'd be very excited as well. How could you not? The point I wanted to talk about before we kind of move on is this. You talked about the defensive line. They get Bear Alexander, great addition. They also double down. They get Anthony Lucas from Texas A&M, came out of Arizona from high school, highly coveted prospect. I think he was a top 75 guy in the nation in his respective class. Jack Sullivan, the defensive lineman from Purdue. They get Mason Cobb at the linebacker position to add in with Shane Lee and Eric Gentry at the linebacker position. Very excited about that. Christian Wallace at cornerback, Kyan Bars at defensive line. And the one interesting addition they did that kind of went under the radar is they get in the transfer defensive back Traquan Fegans from Alabama, and his 5-star younger brother commits to USC right after that in the class of 2025. Ways to go. We know how recruiting is, but you're never mad when you get in the door that early. Hey, you don't argue with it, but it is what it is. I think this year is so key for USC for all the factors we talk about. You only have one more year in the PAC. You only have one more year with Caleb Williams, and the defense is the biggest question. And I don't know that defense is going to be able to grow in the Big Ten if they haven't convinced recruits we're here.
Right.
Best way to convince recruits you're here is to show them.
Yes, so, win.
Yeah, you got to. Now, another thing we need to talk about, staying in the Pac-12, we got a few topics in the PAC today. Now I sent you this, right? Right as you like that, huh? You like that, huh? Yeah, I sent you this right as we were about to go on. Per Dennis Dodd, Colorado holds substantive talks with the Big 12 as Buffaloes consider leaving the Pac-12 per CBS Sports. Jay, talk to me, because I don't find this surprising in the least.
I think I'm more annoyed about this than I am surprised. And I say annoyed because the AD over there at, if I'm correct, at Colorado, I think it was the AD or someone there, kept really downplaying this, saying, oh, no, we're not going anywhere. We're not leaving the Pac-12. We are all bought in. When we have been hearing this report for months that there have been backdoor conversations about getting the heck up out of there because they're not going to get a good, favorable TV deal. You just lost the largest assets in the state, USC, UCLA, and the 11 million people fan base. Yes, Cal, Berkeley is their cool story. Stanford's not too far away. But guess what? Most of their fans don't really watch them play unless they're good. No different than USC and UCLA. The fans are, for the most part, fair weather because there's so many things to do in Los Angeles and in California in general that's really hard to get people to sit down and watch someone be a loser. Is the point. I mean, when UCLA was starting to win, they were still empty stands. And then when they started winning, this fans was like, oh, no, they're actually winning games. Then you start seeing people trickle in. Now with Colorado, they knew that they were going to get up out of there. They knew that they were getting out the paint. And the conversation with the Big 12 makes sense. Just go back to the conference you were at, get the big TV deal, plus you'll have more access to recruits than you do from being in the Pac-12. You're in Denver, so it's not that hard to get California players, but you'll be able to get those Florida players that you've been coveting, especially the ones that Coach Prime wants. Look at the players that he's recruiting. Look at the players he's getting to transfer. A ton of players out of SEC country. Those are who he is targeting because those are the type of caliber athletes he wants in order to compete and win long term. So if Colorado comes to the Big 12, I'm going to be honest, they'll have a chance to kind of run the conference in the next couple of years. If Coach Prime keeps doing what he's doing, which I've said this numerous times, I'm going to say this ad nauseum, and I hope y'all understand this. I don't look at Colorado as just Deion Sanders. I look at Colorado as every single coach he has put on that staff, which I think has been a masterful job of putting together head coaches that are ready to actually compete at the Power 5 level. He's got coaches that know how to compete at that level. And that's more important to me than his name. I don't care about his name at that point. I care about who's around him, who's advising him, who's pushing and going after these athletes. He's got some coaches that are actually got some good credentials. So they have a chance of running things.
The coaching staff he's assembled is really impressive. That's one of the things you and I have consistently talked about when we've gone through the list. They have been able to assemble a lot of really impressive guys. The thing that's so interesting to me here, though, is whenever we really take a step back and just view this from a conference level, I want to talk about the difference in action and then inaction, right? when we look at the Pac-12, one thing we've always talked about is the fact that they felt like they were the next up to renegotiate their contract after the Big Ten seemed like deal was done. The Big 12 ended up leapfrogging them, and almost like in the NFL, if you're a TV media rights provider, why are you going to pay the Pac-12 more than you're going to pay the Big 12? Right? Like
Right.
it just doesn't make sense. And the Pac-12 had promised these teams all this money. The reason why I want to take a step back and talk about this is because whenever Texas and Oklahoma left the Big 12, there was a lot of gloom and doom. And you know what the Big 12 didn't do? They didn't sit on their hands. They made a move. They got 4 teams. They got UCF, they got Houston, they got Cincinnati, and they got BYU to join into their conference. They realized we just got hit. We have to take action. The Pac-12 has sat on their hands. They have done absolutely nothing. They have done absolutely nothing. And now we're sitting in a situation where USC is not going to be there. UCLA is not going to be there. And God forbid they lose Washington and Oregon. I mean, if they lose Washington and Oregon, they're in real trouble. And then you have Colorado who's talking to the Big 12, and Coach Prime has a microscope at Colorado right now where we're talking about them. When was the last time Colorado got this much attention? I mean, we can maybe put together years worth of media views from Colorado, and it still wouldn't be as much as the one they've gotten, and it hasn't even gotten that far yet, right? We're not even a year into the Coach Prime era at Colorado. So I agree with you. I do agree with Truth whenever he said, I don't see it. Colorado football could definitely happen, talking about where they could be. If he can snowball, it'll take years, though. I agree. I think that Jay and I have talked about this. We don't view this as a one-year turnaround. This is a turnaround, a rebuild, and if done correctly, it's going to be fantastic. But how big of a hit? First off, not how big of a hit would this be? This is a massive hit already. I mean, the fact that you have institutions voicing a willingness to leave, if you're a TV media rights deal, why are you going to be willing to budge at all in negotiations? Because it doesn't seem like the Pac-12 has any leverage. It doesn't seem like they have any legs to stand on. Jay, what does the Pac-12 have to do? Because at this point, I guess I'm just kind of lost with where they're at.
I know I'm in the same boat. I don't know what they can do. I mean, who are you going to go get? San Diego State? San Diego? Boise State? I mean, what can they do to stop the bleeding here? I mean, at a certain point, we've got to see the Oregons and Washingtons get pulled into the Big Ten, even though the Big Ten doesn't want to expand that big because logistically they know it's going to be a nightmare trying to make it competitive or make it make sense for what makes and what to do in college football. Hell, I'm honestly expecting the Mountain West to go try to snatch up everybody and just make themselves a nice big conference. But I feel bad for the Oregons and the Washingtons of the world. They shouldn't have to go through this, but the Pac-12 screwed up and lost the 2 largest assets they had. And so, man, I mean, I don't know what they do. I'm just, keeping that a buck. What can be done to salvage any of this?
I have no idea. I think at this point you need a deal. We said this months ago. Every day that goes by, your position is hurt. Go for it.
Yeah. I was going to say, I'm calculating that is 6 teams that could potentially leave if Colorado goes to the Big 12. And I say 6 teams because probably Utah will follow. As much as they keep saying they won't, they will. Especially if they can keep the Holy War going. Keeping the Holy War together, because we don't have a Holy War this year, if I'm correct, which to me is like, what are you doing here? You bring that back. Then if they decide to go for the cornerstone schools of Arizona State, yeah, it's a wrap. That's 6 schools left in the pack. Who are they going to go convince to come in there in the conference?
I have no idea. That's why I say we don't even need to weigh the option of, oh, well, if this happens, what does it mean for the Pac-12? Jay, I think the implication. What did I say a while ago? Whenever we were talking, and this was a long time ago, it was about the Jaden Rashada situation. whenever High Top was clearing everything up, and he was like, it's a real bad look, but it's not as bad as everybody thinks it is once you really start diving into the details. And my point to him was, you're probably right. It was probably a situation where it was just everything was good, everything was logical, but the court of public opinion is a real thing.
Right.
And
that's where the problem runs into play. Like you just said, the court of public opinion is huge.
And it's out. It's out.
Yeah.
So now you have one of the more exciting teams, right? And I say exciting not in terms of like, oh, well, that's a team that's going to make a college football playoff run this year. No, Colorado's not doing that. I say exciting in terms of eyes. You have one of the more exciting teams, intriguing teams right now who's openly having talks with another conference. I don't understand how that's anything but massively negative to the negotiations for the Pac-12. I just don't understand.
I'm with you. And real quick on that, I see everybody's talking about, being on crap because I'm saying Colorado because this, that. Y'all know Colorado won a national championship in the early 90s, right? Like Colorado used to be a viable opponent for everybody. Colorado used to be very competitive. They just stopped trying as hard as everybody else. It was one of those where they didn't want it as bad as other schools. And now they purposely brought in Coach Prime to bring the hype back, to bring back the alum, to get people to bring more money back in to be competitive. And I say that about Coach Prime, just as everybody in the comments, Mark makes a good point. Sure, Deion Sanders is a good football coach. He may not be great, but I don't care about him. I'm talking about Mark Zimmer, the ex-NFL coach who's on his staff as an analyst to help with, going through stuff. I'm talking about Sean Lewis, who was out there giving Georgia problems with his offense. And honestly, their defense was giving Georgia problems too, which is quite fascinating. He was able to do that at Kent State for the years he was head coach. I'm talking about Charles Kelly, who worked at Alabama, was considered the 24/7 recruiter of the year, leaves there, goes to Colorado to try to bring some of that SEC experience. Maurice Sims, their strength and conditioning coach, who worked at Georgia. He worked at Tennessee. He worked at SEC schools, and he's bringing that physicality and that mindset to Colorado. I'm talking about the pieces that he's put together on this that makes me say, oh, he cares. And the one thing, the humility behind this is he recognizes he can't do it by himself. That's something very few coaches can do. Yes, dude's a massive ego. You will hear me say that forever. He's Deion Sanders. He's prime time. He goes by Coach Prime. Of course, he's got an ego. That's key. But guess what? As mentioned in the comments, there is appeal to go play for Coach Prime and be a part of that Colorado build. Because if he can flip that around in the next couple years, one, you won't hear the end of it. Two, I'm hoping Colorado's ready to open up that piggy bank to try to hold on to that. Because if he can do that, other Power 5 schools are going to be looking at him, especially ones with deeper pockets. So we're not talking about just Coach Prime here, even though Colorado's now synopsis with him because that's how they're leveraging him on a marketing standpoint. Look at everything behind him. Look at the coaches in place. I bet you those coaches that he's able to get his hands on, the fact he got Mike Zimmer to come to the collegiate level, he went to Jackson State with him, and he's coming here with the Colorado. You got some good experience behind you. That's all I'm talking about.
Yeah, and even then, I actually, I told you one of the coaches, the cornerback coach for Colorado, played football for my hometown high school, Coach Mathis, right? And so, Denzel knows him. I'm just super intrigued with Colorado this year because there is no doubt this is a rebuild. There is no doubt this Rome wasn't built in a day. But I do like the staff he's assembled. I really like the staff he's assembled. The Sean Lewis offensive coordinator is going to be really fun, especially with the altitude they play in, the speed he likes to go. That's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And Truth and Working Man, they make some good points in here. Working Man earlier says, I'll tell you who's getting all the coaches, Texas. I don't know if you peeped the hires they made this weekend, Jay. But it's impressive. Did you see the 3 hires that Texas made?
I did not. Please enlighten me so I can go through and cry.
So let me make a banner. Look at this. Things happening on the fly. Add banner. Now we're going to click it like it's been here the whole time. Wow. Look at that. We were prepared for this subject. Yeah, no, this one's completely coming out on the fly. Texas makes 3 hires this weekend, all analysts, positions, all assistants. They're Dwights, right? Special assistant to the head coach role. So
Mm-hmm.
the first and foremost is Paul Chryst. Paul Chryst, former head coach at Wisconsin, now coming to work with the offense. The second, Joe DeCamillis. A lot of NFL experience, worked with several NFL teams, right? We're talking Denver. We're talking New York, Atlanta, Jacksonville, Dallas, Chicago, the Rams. He has 2 Super Bowl rings, one with Denver, one with the Rams. And I actually took some time and watched some of his sit down interviews as to how he views special teams. He had me ready to go suit up and run through a brick wall. Granted, I would have had the brick wall run through me, but that's not the point here. I would have attempted it. He was talking about how he views his special teams as the tip of the spear. And he said he listened to a lot of Marine speakers talk about the tip of the spear mentality, where it's we're
Right.
the first in, we're the first out, but it's our job to set the tone. It's our job to get ready. It's our job to make sure everybody understands this is the standard. We're the first ones on the field. That's how he views special teams. And I was getting fired up listening to him. The last one, Payam Sudat. Now, this is one people don't know a lot about, but this is one that I think is going to be a lot of fun. If there was one I'd really like to do a deep dive video into, it's this one. This is a guy that's worked with Cal Poly. He's worked with a Portland State. He worked with Army. At Army, he really started revolutionizing their defense, the double eagle edge. Double eagle
Mm-hmm.
edge? Double eagle flex. That's it. Double eagle flex. So you have the double eagle flex defense there. And the reason why I think this is such a good hire, Jay, is because when we break down what PK wants to do and when we break down what Sadat wants to do, I think it mirrors really well. Sadat is all about, I'm going to cover all the gaps. I'm going to get to the quarterback quick. But because of that, we're going to leave some man on the back, right? Our DBs are going to be in coverage. It is what it is. But it's all about getting there quick. It's all about stopping the run. When we look at PK, the first thing that comes to mind for me when I think of PK is the Jack and X linebacker positions and how that's kind of his calling card within his defense, the
Right.
aggression there. These 3 hires right here, really intriguing, and Texas is doing great work right now, bringing on some assistant coaches. So I just told you the 3 names. What are you thinking as a fan of the opposing team?
Sark is changing, and he's trying to get the mindset of what he learned underneath Nick Saban, bringing in former head coaches as analysts, having them come in as potential position coaches and waiting. Because look, the biggest problem that Alabama has had over the years is keep retaining coaches on certain sides of the ball, mainly offense. Because once you get to Alabama, usually defensively, Saban has it locked up. He usually has a young up and coming person be with them, and they're with them for a few years. But the offensive side, it's been a open revolving door of every 2 to 3 years a new OC comes into play, and it's more of a Saban wants to make sure that he is maintaining cutting edge technology. Right. He's trying to make sure that he's getting players not only prepared for the NFL, but also trying to keep a leg up against the competition. And that's why you'll see those analysts that come in, be a coach with them, maybe run OC for a couple of years, and then go back and get another head coaching job. That is what he's been infamous for doing, especially over the last 7 years. That has been the big piece with the Lane Kiffin hire, the Sarkisian hire, the head coach over at Maryland. Brought him in after he was the head coach. That's the game. Sark is seeing that, okay, if I want to be successful, I can't do this alone. And I can't do this with just the standard 10 staff members that you would have. You got to bring in analysts that can give you a different view into what ideas could work and try to pay attention to what's going on. And as an opposing, fan, Boomer Sooner, that's something that I've seen even with Venables as well. He's bringing in former head coaches as assistants, and they're working through that same thing. So your top coaches usually do that. Your other coaches, that most coaches are pretty narcissistic in most capacities. You have to be in a way in order to be successful in this game. You got to feel like what you do cannot be done by anybody else and go out there and prove that you're right. but you can't go in there with a lot of doubt. You know what I'm saying? So having the mindset of, let me bring in these former head coaches as analysts, give them opportunity to keep themselves busy. Plus, by paying them very little money, they can keep a lot of their buyout. That's usually one other play you can do it as an assistant is, I want to keep my buyout money, go be an analyst for a couple of years, and then go find a head coaching job. Because you're getting paid very well for getting fired anyway. So I think that this was a smart move by Sark to do that and bring in, like I said, additional analysts. I love it when head coaches recognize that, it takes a village to win these championships and not just one man.
Yeah, and one of the things I really like, Truth makes a great point. He says, I'm actually not the biggest fan of some of Sark's end-game decisions, but he's consistent. And yeah, this is the exact point I was going to make. If there's one thing that Sark, and I've been a Sark fan ever since, there's one thing that he has displayed that he doesn't have the greatest grasp on yet, and it's the in-game adjustments, because it's something like if Sark is down by 7 points, like there's no chance. Historically speaking, there's like no chance they're winning the game. Like it is really bad, his halftime record, if he is trailing, like shockingly so.
Right.
That being said, that's why I love looking at a Paul Christ and saying, hey, let's do some stuff, right? Like,
right.
I know that my offensive philosophy is brilliant. I know that. If I can just fix these few things, we're golden. I think the moves they've made have been fantastic. I just think that even the attention to the detail in the special teams, and I know Sadat's not a household name yet. I'm really excited to see what he does with this linebacker group, especially with Anthony Hill there. Anthony Hill being from Denton, Texas. And I don't know how many people watched that spring game, but seeing him be versatile enough as a true freshman. I mean, hell, the kid wasn't even technically a true freshman yet. Should still be a senior in high school, and they're moving him from inside to outside. And I'm watching him get to the quarterback from inside, then beat the tackle on the outside. And I'm thinking, man, this is just what I saw him do at Denton Ryan like 6 months ago. Like Texas is a fun team this year, man. A really, really fun team. Yeah, Cordy, hey, I am so excited for Anthony Hill. He looks like he's going to be the real deal. The real deal.
Yeah. I don't like him at all.
I can
don't like
imagine
him.
you don't.
I don't. He's going to be a problem. Like, yeah, he's going to be a problem.
Yeah, he did. The defensive analyst, which is going to be a great move. You're right, Slap. That's on me. I should have included that whenever we were talking about Lincoln Riley. That's on me. You're right. He did hire a defensive analyst that has done great work in the past, worked with the NFL, worked with college. So that's going to be an interesting move to see how that helps USC going forward defensively. We just need a few good claps for his guys' development, and then it will work the way he thinks. But it's almost like his... Yeah, that's interesting. I missed the comments before that, so I don't want to do too much catch up. At times, maybe Texas can finally have the same starting QB for 11. Yeah, Shadow, no doubt. Quarterback consistency, man. Y'all keep Quinn all year. It's going to be very exciting. And that's another thing, man. I talk about Anthony Hill. I'm excited to see him. I'm excited to see how Quinn develops. Another year in the system, another year with familiarity. Ton of great conversations there to be had. And I think one of the best things for Quinn Ewers is Malik Murphy balling the way he did, right?
Push him.
Yeah, I think that's great for Quinn Ewers. And I don't think that he's averse to that. He committed to Ohio State out of high school, and they had an abundance of quarterbacks there when he committed to them. Jesus Christ, they could have thrown a quarterback and provided it. Have you ever done a dive into the Ohio State quarterback room?
I have.
It was wild what they had at one time. Now, I don't know that all of them are going to work out, but it's just in terms of like being able to assemble this many blue chip quarterbacks in one room.
In one room, yeah, in 1 year, and it be okay for initially. But I mean, yeah, it's absurd what they've been able to do.
Absolutely
absurd.
Wild. Slap says Texas should do well this year. I think so, man. I think so.
I looked at the over-unders on my live stream on Sunday. Me and PG went through, from the PG show, we went through every single one. And when I saw what Vegas in DraftKings is thinking right now. Look, I'll just say this. Both Texas and Oklahoma being 9.5 and expected to go to the Big 12 championship tells me that Vegas is setting a trap for all bettors. All bettors. They're setting a trap. They want you to take the over on Texas and they want you to take the under on Oklahoma. Both of them are like, I think the over on Texas at 9.5, which I actually think that's a smart bet. Take the 9.5 because I expect Texas to win at least 10 games this year. There's zero excuse for them not to. Their schedule is so favorable. It's so favorable. You take the over. But Vegas wants you to take the under on Texas. They want you to not believe in them. And they really want you to take the under on Oklahoma because the buy-in on that's like a minus 150. So for those that aren't initiated when it comes to gambling, it's for every dollar you win, you have to bet at least $1.50. And so, of course, that's considered the quote unquote favorite bet. They want you to take that bet because you put Oklahoma at 9.5 after having a season like they did. Of course, everybody's going to take advantage of that. Oh, that's free money. I'm going to take the free money. They want you to. Oklahoma has no excuse not to win 10 games this season.
You know what? We're going to get together. You understand sport betting better than me. And
yeah,
I don't.
That's my narcotic.
I don't understand sport betting at all. If I'm going to come completely clean here, it's something that I never really dove into because what we would do is we would have all the guys over at the house, and it would be, I mean, I'm from Gainesville, so it would be the thing of like just throw 20 on the table. Oh, who's going to win the game? Boom, simple, right then and there. And then it was like all the extra stuff. RJ coming in. I'm not sold on yours watching his tape. You don't. There was a tale of two quarterbacks last year, RJ. And it's tough for me to know which one, but I did see some good out of Quinn. I think it'd be very, very, very interesting to sit down with you and take a look at it, given that you obviously played college football. But that being said, I'm very much well interested in that wide receiver room they have. Goodness gracious, everybody's forgetting about Isaiah Nayor. He's really talented, man. I hope he comes back good from that knee. He's really, really talented. A.D. Mitchell in the room, ridiculous. Whittington's still there.
No, I mean, as much as I'm an Oklahoma fan. I don't like Texas. Of course I'm biased, but I'm also not an idiot. I'm going to recognize when there's talent there. And I'm a college football fan more than anything. And so I know what I'm looking at when it comes to them. And they're, like I said, there's no excuse not to win at least 10 games. It's perfectly set up for them. It's perfect for them to make a big run. And it'll be a fun season for both Oklahoma and Texas. This should be the fun season as we leave the conference and remind everybody of what they're going to miss in the Big 12 and why the Big 12 probably should have been doing a better job of trying to get bigger TV contracts to keep OU and Texas around. But I digress.
No, you know what's funny? I actually thought about this earlier. Was that an inevitable? Like, with the way that the SEC was growing, do you kind of think that the move Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC was an inevitability?
Same thing with the Big Ten's move or whatnot. It feels like we're going to get to the point where we have two mega conferences. It feels like we're going to get to that point. Do I like that? No. And I tell you why. It really takes away from the best part of college football, which is the regionalization of it. Like you've heard all the major talking heads talk about this. And now we're jumping into the conferencing conversation. And so we can cut this. You can cut this tie easily as in other videos. We talk about this, but let's dive into that real quick.
Let's do it.
The regionalization of college football is the thing that makes it so much more appealing. And this is why I say that. Having your rival right there in state is so much more fun because even if the rivalry is not a true rivalry, like you go with like Oregon State, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, stuff like that, the ratios are very off. But you're still working with these people every day. You're still going to dinner with these people. You're seeing them at local bars. You're seeing them at local hangouts. You're seeing them at kids events and seeing each other's gear to talk trash, friendly, as sports fans. That has always made the culture of college football so much better. And I also remind people of this. College football, of course, has way more fans in comparison to like the professionals like NBA and NFL for one reason and one reason only. They get a built-in fan base every single year freshmen enrolling at these schools. And so when those kids enroll, traditionally they're a fan of the school that they're enrolling in. That's typically why they go to those schools outside of going for other programs, but they're usually, I'd say about at least 90%, if not higher to like 97% of those fans are fans of that school. And so you just keep adding more fans and more fans and more fans that like the likes of the NFL are begging to get their hands on, that colleges don't have to work hard for. They enrolled in your school. So they're there. And so that's where you get these larger stadiums and bigger fanfares, because though it's school pride's a lot bigger than team pride. And that to me is where the college football was going to hurt by going into these mega conferences, because you start to lose that. It dwindles away. Yes, I'm a root for my school, but it's a lot more fun jabbing the fan here in state that I know that's a fan of the opposing school than it is trying to figure out if I can find a fan across the country that I could jab that while I'm at the local bar. It's not as enjoyable. And I think that they lose that the essence of college football by going into these mega conferences over time.
I don't disagree, right? Because we need to understand like the tribalism that comes with college football in particular.
There you go. That's the best word for it. I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, right. Like tribalism is a great synonym for fandom in general, but I think college it exponentially increases this tribalism, right? And there are so many different layers to it, which makes college fandom just awesome. I think another thing, like you said, that the fan bases are baked in. They come in every single year. You also have how many Division I FBS teams? 130?
Yep.
Right. So like you have so much opportunity. It's unbelievable. I do agree in the sense of I think it's good, but I also think that creating what the SEC is doing, it's going to be good for people like us, right? That are going to be obsessive about college football regardless of the regionalism to it. But I don't think that there's any arguing the fact that like regionalism is good for college football. I completely concede that point.
Yeah.
I think the reason why it never even hits my mind, that thought process, is because I'm so obsessed with college football. Like you're so obsessed with college football. Hell, the 64 people in this chat, it's May 30th, a 6:28 on a Tuesday. And the people in here, we're obsessed with college football. So regional, not regional, we're going to be watching college football. We're going to be talking college. This is what we're going to do. So we're not really the average. You get what I mean? Like this group that has gathered around the table here today, we are not the average college football fan. We're on the right side of the bell curve of being a little bit obsessed. There's nothing wrong with that, right? I think that the move to the SEC was inevitable for Texas and OU. I just do. I think that you had two massive fish in a pond that was growing smaller and smaller every single year. And these two massive fish looked across the way and saw a bunch of other big fish in a pond that was continually getting bigger. And I just think that the big fish needed to, what's the quote from the other guys? I'm a peacock, Sergeant. You got to let me fly.
Right.
Yeah. You got to let me fly. Right. I think that was long-term. It's going to be good. But I think it just comes back. The Big 12 did great work coming in and doing what they did, getting those teams. Great. Love every move Sark made with this program. If he gets over the hump this year, it's going to be nasty. Yeah, this is a big year for Texas as well. We talk about it being a big year for USC, and in different manners. This is a big year for Texas. And Cordy, I did want to go back to this comment you had because I think it's a great one. And I made this mistake, and I need to eat a little bit of crow right now. I was very hard on Michigan. Not this season, the previous season. The previous season. Because I'm going to paint you the picture. This is right before Bryce Young comes in. Michigan plays Alabama in the bowl game. Okay? Bama has players injured. I mean, half that team was injured for the year. Both starting linebackers out. I mean, they were out day dot for Bama. Game one, both starting linebackers out. That team was in shambles. This is the first year of this is before Mac Jones took over, right? This is the year Tua went down. Mac Jones played in Auburn, the Iron Bowl, had the 2 pick sixes. One of them really wasn't his fault. One of them real bad pick six. They go to Michigan, and Jay, I made this is right when I first started my channel, and I made a video saying, I'll answer that in a bit. I made a video talking about if Michigan can't beat Alabama right now, as Alabama's hobbling into the Citrus Bowl, I don't know what better opportunity they have to beat a marquee team. Well, they got shellacked by Bama in that bowl game. I don't know if you remember Mac Jones. He looked like the Mac Jones that would end up winning the national championship the next season. One of the first plays out the game was just a huge bomb pass down the middle to Jerry Jeudy. He just glides in for a touchdown. At that point, Cordy, I was pretty much well of the mindset, like, I don't think Michigan should fire him, but at the same time, I think the seat is really heating up, and I think it's on a timer.
Yeah.
I was wrong. Had they been as impatient as I was, I'm about to use a good word, pontificating, they would not be in the situation they're in. I was 100% wrong. And so you're right. It's just like this. You plant a seed, but seeds take different times to grow based on the plant you have planted, based on the soil, all these factors. There's not a one-stop shop for like, you do this and this is the result. There's nuance. And so I love this point, Cordy, that sometimes a slow rebuild happens and sometimes you need to let it happen. I think this is a great, great point. I actually think this needs more discussion, to be honest. And even you, Jay, as an Oklahoma fan, I think this is a phenomenal point, even for you in a video and in a live to talk about, because it's a really, really solid one, Cordy. And if I would have been as adamant, I was wrong. I was 100% wrong on Michigan. 100% wrong.
I was sold on Harbaugh going there because he brought an energy that hadn't been there for a while. Wow. Kind of a meme stock short squeeze. Darn.
I love it.
Look, we've seen some consistency at a TCU, maybe not at the echelon they were at, but they've been consistent of being somewhat of a problem for a lot of teams. I actually went to the Texas TCU game down in Fort Worth when Josh Doctson was there and Boykins was throwing the ball. They ate Texas alive that game.
What was that, 2014?
Something like that.
Yeah, Denzel was the safety.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, I was at that game. They were honoring LaDainian Tomlinson, in which he's in the stands. I tried to go get a picture with him, but didn't work out because I loved LaDainian Tomlinson. But I digress. My point is the problem with college football was similar to a problem that the NFL had. And this problem has gotten so bad, so prevalent, that the NFL commissioner sent out a note to all the teams and told them, hey, do y'all know how much money you're spending on buyouts for these coaches that y'all are firing too early? You probably need to evaluate that. Joe Klatt ran the numbers like 2 years ago before all the NIL stuff really started going down and those conversations happened and the court case and everything. And he was like, teams are paying in the Power 5 like 90 something million dollars to like 6 or 8 coaches to not work. But the statement is there's not enough money to pay the players. But schools are agreeing to pay all these coaches all this money. Jimmy Sexton's got Texas A&M by the kahunas and letting them know, you can fire my guy. You're going to be writing us a check for 80-something million.
I'll tell you what, if you're ever in a position to hire an agent, get Jimmy Sexton.
Yes, if you need an agent, call Jimmy Sexton and have him negotiate whatever, because guess what's going to happen? You're going to have a ginormous buyout and you're going to get paid.
Whatever
because
he's
not going to take less. Yes. It's blackmail. It had to have been blackmail. It hasn't been blackmail, Ty.
I don't, and we said this last time, right? This is the beautiful thing about this show. We had another topic, but scrap the other topic. We're here now, right? This is what makes this so much fun, man. This is what I love about this. We said this last time. We said this on Friday. What happens in the NFL when Aaron Rodgers signs a new quarterback or when Pat Mahomes, he sets the market,
Yeah, the market's reset at that point. The next quarterback, right now, Patrick Mahomes is waiting for Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow to get their contracts so that he can re-up his. He's not going to do it before.
Now, do you want to know why I bring that up, Jay? I mean, you know why. You know where I'm going with this, but the reason why I bring this up, and Matt is on me, right? He says, how long till A&M implodes? This is exactly where I'm going, Matt. They have put themselves in a rock and a hard place.
Yep. Tell them what I've been saying, Ty. Tell them what I've been telling everybody too. Tell them.
This is the problem. And Jay, you and I swear to God, have been screaming this since about midway through right when they signed the contract. You and I were like, okay. And then this year, I know both of us have made several videos on it. This is the interesting thing, Matt. I give you that example about the quarterback setting the market because Jimbo Fisher has set the new market for Texas A&M. I give you that because of this. He signed a contract extension off of an 8-4 season where the best thing he's done thus far as head coach at Texas A&M is beat Nick Saban. That's the best thing he did. He got a massive contract extension off of that, is being paid like he's winning national championships, but he's having mediocre seasons. The reason why that's problematic, let's say it doesn't work out. Let's say Texas A&M, they need to hire the next rock star coach. He's not going to look at Texas A&M and say, I'm going to do it for what Jimbo is doing it for, because he's not going to say, I'm going to give you Jimbo results. He's going to say, I'm going to give you Kirby results. I'm going to give you, because these coaches are selling themselves. His asking price is going to be much higher than the ridiculous amount they paid Jimbo because they capped their market on mediocrity, paying it like it's a national championship machine. That's the part I don't get. And every year that goes by, it gets harder and harder to fire him. I understand why Jimbo signed the contract. I don't understand why A&M signed the contract.
I mean, you just don't do stuff just to do it. I mean, that's the problem. Is what they look like. Just, I mean, it goes right into the Rick James piece. I mean, it goes right into the Rick James Chappelle show skit of just do stuff just to do it. What I look like, just going to grind my feet in this man's couch like it's something to do. I got more sense than that. Yeah, I remember grinding my feet in that man's couch. That's exactly A&M. So we got more sense than paying this guy this money. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and pay this man all of this money. It's like, but like you said, you have just signed up for mediocrity. Michigan State did the same thing. I understand getting a coach and thinking, okay, we've got a chance. We've got a coach that can help us be consistent as far as winning. The problem with Jimbo Fisher is he got this extension years later. I commend A&M for giving him the 5 years to get started. But you put this man in a situation now where he's getting so much money and he has not given you a national championship. He doesn't want to change. Like, he does not want to. The Bobby Petrino hire is the most intriguing hire in the world because I think they're going to kill each other before the season's over.
Oh,
one of those two got to go.
It's going to be great.
They're going to fight. It's going to be infighting. One of them's got to go. And
it's either going to be terrible or great.
Yes. And the question is whose ego's going to the side? And honestly, I don't see Jimbo Fisher seceding his ego.
He's not going to feel like he has to. He's going to look at his paycheck. He's going to look at his position relative to the guy he's paying. Or in theory, he's not paying, but you get my point, right? He's the one who lobbied for him to be in that position.
Yep.
And
yeah.
I've said this before. There is next to no functional difference between what Texas A&M is getting from Jimbo and what the... My man Homer said I tuned in right in time. Oh yeah. No, this wasn't planned either. We got taken here and I scrapped the last comment and we're riding out on this because I'm feeling some type of way. Like I always reference, Homer, the Charlie meme from It's Always Sunny. If you want to talk about the mail, Mac, I've been dying to talk about the mail. Can we talk about the mail? That's me with Jimbo right now.
Yes.
The issue is, what are they getting from Jimbo? Yeah, Matt, you did take us here. This is 100% on you. What are they getting from Jimbo that they didn't get from Kevin Sumlin for substantially less money? I can answer you the question. They're getting better recruiting classes with Jimbo. The flip side of that, Jay, is that's actually problematic. If you ask this to an A&M fan, and I want this for everybody in the chat, I'm about to peep you something right quick. I've seen this said in Twitter debates and everything, and it's never made sense to me. People will say, oh, but look at the way Jimbo recruits. That's why they're paying him. you do realize you're basically admitting that he's giving you the same results with better talent, which
That's the
then
problem.
creates another question for me. Why? Why?
But why are you paying more money for this for similar to less results? Now, I think there was a comment in here asking about the 9-1 season. No, I don't believe he got that. He got that after. I don't think he got out the 9-1 season in 2020, the COVID year that I don't think most people even cared much about. It's just the fact that they locked him in
Petrino.
without Bobby Petrino, locking him in, even making a playoff like that. Like, I know Jimmy Sexton is just good at his job. He had to have blackmail on somebody, pictures of them doing stuff they aren't supposed to do something, because what sense does it make to go ahead and pay that man right now? Like, you could have waited. The contract was already there. You had enough time on it to vet things out and make sure it's going to work long term. But Ty, you're right. He got hired just the same reason why Hugh Freeze got hired at Auburn. It's because they beat Nick Saban before. That's it. But what does that get you if you can't beat nobody else in the conference?
This is the part I don't understand. And now, this is going to be a big... this is so interesting, man. We could do weeks worth of streams just talking about teams who this upcoming season, it's a big year for them. Now, as much as I want to say this is a big year for Jimbo, we arrive right back at the beginning of this conversation, which is the deal that basically makes it to where, are you going to pay the buyout?
Yeah, that's the question. You going to pay that buyout or not?
And like we said, this is the thing that just, it kills me. And Truth, you said it earlier because you said they're dumb. I'm one of those people that I try and think about things very logical. So for me, it's always crazy to think that there are people in positions of power that are going to be acting that counter to all logic. That's what always just throws me for a loop. Eric, thank you so much for the $49 on the super sticker. Thank you for joining us this evening, man. Thank you very much, Eric. Whatever you want us to talk about, I'm your guy. You let me know. But
yeah, we'll give you the last topic of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. We come and we start going in circles when we get to this point, because the results aren't there. The best thing they've had is the Alabama win. I hope Texas A&M gets it together, because if Texas A&M is good and Texas has the season I think they'll have, that we've talked about them having, and they come to the SEC, Oklahoma keeps improving, the SEC is going to be an incredible conference with a good Texas A&M, a good OU, a good Texas, Alabama trying to stay where they're at, LSU with Brian Kelly, Georgia, Billy Napier at Florida. This could be making the way for an amazing show for us all. An amazing show for us all.
Yeah.
The problem is, if they don't get there and they have the same year, we come back to two problems. You can't fire him because of the buyout. And the reason why it becomes an even bigger issue is if you do fire him and decide to pay the buyout, now you have basically set the market on what you're going to pay a head coach, meaning you're going to have to basically hand out the same exact contract you're getting away from. Why? So they renegotiated Saban's afterwards, Matt, but initially, if I'm not mistaken, Jimbo had the biggest contract. There was a period where he had the biggest, then they renegotiated Saban's, then they renegotiated Kirby. But he was being paid like his name is Kirby, like his name is Saban, like he's Dabo. And he's got a ring. I give you that. He's got a ring. Not many coaches can genuinely say, I have a ring as the guy. Matt, if I knew, I'd be a rich man, because I'd be leveraging that information. I promise you. I have no idea. No idea. Now, I did see this earlier, and I'm so happy you asked this again, LFG. I was actually just thinking about this. You'd asked this, and it's been on my mind as I've been talking. Wondering if and when PK's Texas DBs will look like the great defensive secondaries Jimmy Lake developed at the University of Washington. I think it'll get there. I like the DB hire y'all made. The thing that's so interesting is I just think that PK Jimmy Lake relationship was so well constructed. Like their theories just bounced off one another, and they were able to build a really symbiotic defense where one person paid such heavy emphasis to one side, another person the other side, but they both knew what they were going to do. Yeah, he's got some money. He's got a lot of money. You're right. You're right, working man. But no, I think that Jimmy Lake and PK was just a great marriage. LFG, a great marriage.
Yeah.
If UT had a coach that went 26-10 in 3 seasons with 3 bowl wins, they probably would have been extended as well. I don't necessarily disagree, Shadow. Here's the problem. That's essentially what Kevin Sumlin gave you, and you fired Kevin Sumlin for the same thing. And while I wouldn't be as mad if A&M just extended Jimbo, if they would have just given him it's the way they did the contract extension where I just have no idea why. Why?
Why do you pay him and you ain't got to worry? He hasn't won you anything yet. And then you get the disappointing season last year. Last year was a disappointment. For as long as he's been there, you should never have a season like that.
My bad, man. I'm texting RJ real quick.
No, you're fine. But that's the point with the Jimbo Fisher and why the calls for his head has come down. Jimbo has been there too long for them to ever have a season like they did.
No, I completely agree. And truth, I think this is a great comment. LFG, I think this is also the part 2 to my answer. I think this is a great observation. That's why Patterson helped so much last year. It's this thought of somebody who has a supreme understanding of the front 7, and then somebody who's got an amazing understanding of the secondary. Truth, I gotta get, I'll get Denzel on here again, and I will do a whole episode just about him breaking down Patterson.
Jimbo Fisher's been there for 5 years, and he's had 2 seasons over 500 in conference, and going 9-8, 9-8, and then 5-7. You can't be there that long. Now he wins his bowl games, give him that, but you can't be there that long and lose and go 5-7.
I love this. Homer says we fired Herman at 32-18 and 4 bowl wins. Herman fired himself. I just love that quick quit back. Herman fired himself. That's great. Like I said, it's. I think that if you really want to argue he should have gotten the extension, I'm not going to buy it. But I think that you whatever.
You can't sell me on that ever.
Whatever. If you want to do it, do it. Don't do the extension the way they did the extension. Because you have married yourself to something now, and it's not even just about the not being able to buy out. It's, to me, the bigger issue, Jay, is that you have restructured the market for your contract. There's no getting away from that. None. The only way you get away from that is if you hire an up-and-comer, where you don't have to say, oh, we need better. It's we think you're a fit. Then it's interesting. Homer, I'd be really interested, man. I got to get you on here, and I got to get your take on some A&M stuff. That'd be a fun one. I'll tell you what.
Oh, yeah.
Homer
Texas
and
fans
Denzel,
are great.
That'd be fun.
Texas fans are great when it comes to talking about A&M.
And a lot of them are playing in the NFL, or they did play in the NFL. Ironically enough, LFG, my buddy Denzel, the one I'm saying I want to get on the show, he played for Gary Patterson at TCU. He was the safety for TCU. Coming out of high school, he was in between Washington and TCU because of Jimmy Lake and the secondary he was going on there. Wait, I don't know if Jimmy Lake was there at that time. I know it was like right around that same time, but it was really interesting to hear like his process through it all. He ended up choosing TCU, and I mean, got coached up by one of the greatest secondary coaches we've seen. It's awesome to hear him break down film. It really is something, man. Not this last national championship because he was out there. RIP. He, I'll never forget, Jay. We were watching at my fiance's family house. This will be the last thing. We were watching the game of Georgia and Michigan, and Denzel, he texts me. He's like, "You trying to go out to the national championship?" And at the time, I'm thinking he's just, I said Georgia, Michigan. I meant Michigan, TCU, the Georgia, Ohio State that day. He texted me, "Oh, you trying to go out to the national championship?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm going to try." I didn't think anything else of it. Next thing I know, he's sending pictures from California. He's out at the national championship. They get slaughtered. But 2 seasons ago, it was after the national championship. It's like 3:00 in the morning. Denzel's in my living room. We're rewatching the national championship, and he's breaking down defense. And it's Alabama's Nick Saban sets. And he's like, "Oh, yeah, this is this. And when they do this," and he's completely calling what's about to happen. Talking to a Patterson coached player, guys, it's wild. It is. He's a sponge. Listening to him talk football is awesome. It's so cool. Truth says Jimmy Lake was kind of PK took a step down. Slake. Yeah, I remember all that. Yeah. And then he fought third year. He's got him. Players want to play for Sarkisian. For Herman, it was the opposite. Yes, I've always heard Sark is, able to get really good connections with players. He was real big in Alabama being able to establish a connection with Bryce. Luckily for Alabama, they were able to make sure multiple coaches established that connection. Because can you imagine if Texas would have ended up with Bryce? Terrifying to think of what Steve Sarkisian would have done with Bryce Young. Terrifying. Oh God, I don't even want to think about that. I do want to think about what Alabama would have done with Steve Sarkisian and Bryce Young, though. That does sound good. Eric says, "How many one-score wins did OU have in 2021? The pendulum easily swings either way with no defense. We had none. No defense for a long time." Yeah. OU's an interesting team. We're going to do another deep dive into them. I actually just finished rewatching the West Virginia game, Jay.
Really?
Before we got on. Yeah, that was what I was doing right before we cooked dinner. It's all over the place. OU is the more I rewatch them, they're really interesting. How all over the place. It makes sense. Don't get me wrong, but it's just all over the place. Good Lord, Bryce. And yeah, that's right. I had Cam Rising. Free bowl tickets if you connected. Yeah. And he should be able to get free TCU tickets for life. Denzel should. Let me tell you what. Truth, earlier, we were in the middle of talking. RJ played for Petrino, and then he played in the SEC. He's played at every level of football. RJ was kind enough to grace us with his time. I hope to get him back on. I just texted him, "I'm sorry, RJ, with the wedding coming up, it's been everything I can to try and do content plus everything else." A
lot of last minute goes, which I totally understand.
Ooh, I don't know about this, Seth. Nwanari isn't coming to Champ U Barbecue. I don't know about that.
That is correct. Yeah, I'm seeing rumors that he's coming the weekend before.
Okay. Well, as long as you get him on campus, that's the.
Oh yeah, his official is still happening, but I've been seeing a lot of rumors that he's going to be here the June 9th. He'll be here the weekend before. That's been the latest set of reports, and so that's not a bad thing. That isn't a bad thing. That gives the team and the staff the opportunity to just have a personal touch with just him, talking with him, and potentially, you may have PJ there.
And the good news is he's already taken some visits, right?
Yeah.
So you'd love to have him for Champ U Barbecue. Don't get me wrong. That's always the goal. Events like that, that's where you want them. The benefit is, though, is if you've had a pre-existing relationship with this guy, as much as you want him there, as long as you get a visit, you don't feel terrible. What I do know about this, and it's probably not news, but I will share. A&M and Tennessee are making money moves when it comes to, and I don't mean NIL, although let's be honest, it's recruiting.
Probably both. Yeah.
They're making moves when it comes to Inwinari. They want him. They want him bad. And I think this is a cat that the longer things go on, bigger teams are going to get involved. I bet Georgia's going to bark up that tree because he's got a lot of versatility, man. He's a really, really, really cool prospect because of his ability to play inside or outside, depending on the need of the defense he goes to, the strength and conditioning program, how they view him. Really cool prospect. There's a lot of great prospects.
So yeah, I saw his On3 posted his visit listing. So this weekend, I believe. Let me see if I can go find it real quick. Yep. So Georgia, he's in Georgia this weekend. Oklahoma the next weekend. Tennessee the weekend after that. Missouri the last weekend of June, and his final visit is September in Oregon. So you know the Phil Knight money's coming. That's if he doesn't commit before then.
And I actually think he's
curious.
Really
I think he commits.
I don't think he's going to Oregon, but I think he fits really well in Lanning's defense.
Yeah. Like, I'm not even gonna lie. I mean,
like,
yeah,
really well.
Yeah.
Really,
I hate it. I hate
really, really well. This is an interesting one. How many commits do you think Texas gets in June over under? I don't know what their recruiting front is looking like right now, truth, but that's because I don't really know. I went real deep into the transfer portal this year, and I think that's because of Colorado. And because I went real deep into the transfer portal, I'm almost a little bit behind on my, because I do watch throughs, but this is what I try and like learn more about like scheme and all of that. And so I'm behind on that. So now I'm doing all this right here. Yeah, I haven't dove into recruiting, but I'd be interested to see. I know that I don't know how y'all aren't going to be fine. The state of Texas is loaded. And I mean, I'm not saying you got to win them all, but like this is a good point. We talk about this, the effect a quarterback can have, and especially a quarterback like Arch, who, I mean, that was the worst, Homer, because I was on my way to Maine whenever Arch committed. I don't know if you remember, I was in the middle of an airport in North Carolina. And it was actually kind of funny because I go to take out my phone and I'm trying to record this video, and people are walking all beside me. People are talking. It's the summer months, right? People are traveling. This guy, I don't know whether he was a steward or what, maybe a pilot. I don't know. I really didn't get to talk to him very long, but he had he was obviously an employee. He comes out of this lounge, this hallway, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I told him, I was like, "Oh, I do some YouTube college football stuff, and Arch Manning just committed to Texas." And the guy's like, he got fired up. He's like, "Oh, Arch Manning just committed to Texas." He goes, "Go in that hallway." He says, "If anybody asks, tell them I sent you." So I'm in this area where only like the stewardesses, the pilots are supposed to be. And someone starts to get mad at me, and he doubles back, comes down there. He's like, no. I told him he's just going to record a video. So if you go back and watch that video, I'm in this weird hallway, and you can see me kind of looking at people uneasy. And it's because like I wasn't supposed to be there. But luckily, this guy, he understood. He understood the situation. This was a big, big commitment. We got to get some DL edge. Davis is targeting a lot of SEC country guys. We only took Sadir last year on the interior. That's going to be a big area for y'all, no doubt about it. Luckily, this is a great year to need anything along the defensive front. Anything along the defensive front. There are so many options. And I wonder whether this will be the first year in a few years where Bama doesn't snag the number one edge. Because they've done it so many years in a row.
No, you're right.
I'm
curious to if Bama can go for it.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I think they can, but I also think that whenever they're, and look, they've done it before, but they're coming off of a class that includes Keon Keeley, who was the number 2 rated player in the nation behind Arch Manning. And I don't know if y'all peeped the All-American game. I don't know if y'all saw some of his plays. My God. There was a play where one of the cats that was recruiting him to Ohio State, their offensive lineman, highly ranked guy, they did a one rep, Jay. Keeley picked him up, set him down, and just kept running. And everybody was just like, oh, okay.
Oh, you're that guy. All right, never mind.
And then they got Yonze Pierre, who's green. He's a little bit undersized, but he's got the height and he's got the frame to be able to add weight. But his athleticism and his explosiveness is nutty. The good news is there's a lot of 5-star edges right there. There's a lot of 5-star edges. Truth to your point, a Colin Simmons looks at the situation now, seeing some of the coaches at Texas. Yeah, I mean, why not stay? Mo Davis? That's not a bad guy to get coached by. You look where he's been to Alabama. He's been to, I mean, you name it. He's been there. He's been in the NFL. He's been at Texas. He's been at Alabama, coached great players. We know what he does. So why not? You get to stay home. Bo Davis is there. I mean, this is a great year for Texas and Truth's point for y'all to have those needs.
Yeah, it's true.
What a better year.
Looking at the landscape in this year's recruitment, man, the defensive line is huge with a ton of prospects.
Someone asked your thoughts on Rattler as a first rounder. He would have to have a big year, Cinnamon. He's got the ability, but he needs a huge year.
His reputation is tarnished really bad.
Well, this is going to be a callback to something we said earlier in the show. And this is just because I come from that background. The court of public opinion is an incredibly powerful thing. That's why, what case was it here recently where there was a big to-do afterwards where they said that they should have sequestered the jury because there was so much media storm and court of public opinion about an issue, and with the access to social media and all of that, they were like, hey, the jury should have been sequestered, like put in a hotel and not allowed anything to do with all of this because the court of public opinion and how it can sway people's thought processes. And so, yeah, no, look, it's one of those things where if there's this thought that's out there, it's really tough. It goes back to this life lesson that I was always taught growing up. And I'm sure it's not just me, everybody was. You can do 1,000 good things, and it takes a long time to build up that good reputation, right? It takes a lot of those good events. And then after the 10th, 11th one, they start to remember, Jay, he's as reliable as it gets. Very easy to undo a good reputation. Where it's very hard to build one, it's very easy to undo one. That's the situation, right? That's kind of how I liken it. LSU's going to be tough. NIL is going to be, Simmons with LSU. I know that's a big one. He's real deep into that. We just got to win on the field and we can get those guys late in the cycle, but it's a prove it year. No doubt about it. 10 wins, I think, is the standard this year. It's got to be.
No, I agree. It's there. So, oh man, what a show.
These two cats that Bama just got, man. If y'all are bored after this, which we're about to hop out of here, I'm going to be on Hall of Fame Media's podcast here in a little bit. But I'm going to tell y'all this. If you get bored, go watch Keon Keeley, go watch Yonze Pierre, go watch a lot of those cats out of last year's class. 2023, 2024 going to be a lot of good players.
Yeah.
Jay, I think that's about it for me, man. What are you thinking?
I think I'm good, man. It was awesome chatting up with everybody.
Yeah, I know,
got a lot of I gotta go eat. I am starving. But real quick, Matt, you asked the question about how is Rattler's rep tarnished. He lost his job to Caleb Williams. He looked really bad that year at the beginning when he lost his job. That's where his reputation got tarnished, was that. He was the consensus #1 pick going into this past draft. If he didn't lose his job to Caleb and go out there and he ate, he was supposed to have been the #1 pick coming out of that draft that year. He didn't. And it was because he didn't play very well. And so that's where his rep got tarnished. And so he has to redeem himself back to that number, because the expectation is that Spencer Rattler was going to be the next #1 pick to come from Oklahoma that follows the Kyler Murrays and the Baker Mayfields. because he has the arm, he has the talent. It's just that year just was bad. His decision making wasn't there, and then of course he did well as South Carolina, but I don't think that was enough to make him a first round pick again. Probably second. The team will take him for a second, which means you're probably going to start within a year or two. But the fact that everyone was so high on him, and then he lost his job, dropped him so low.
It's this is going to be off the rail, right? This is going to be my old debate mind coming back in.
Yep.
From a case I ran, and the desert effect, right? When I think of this is what I think of. So it's this theory that like you have a super high temperature during the day, and at night it's like the opposite, like the pendulum swings and then it goes to super low temperatures, right? And it's these polar opposites. And that's a great way to think about Spitzer. Whenever that year first started, I mean, I had said it, but like it wasn't just me, right? I was very high on Rattler. You looked around the nation, he was Vegas's betting favorite for the Heisman at a good margin, and it did not go well. That's what I mean when I say the desert effect. You had something that was supposed to be so far on one side, and it ended up switching so far on the other side that it's like this opposite end of the pendulum spectrum. And that's very tough to come back from. We know he's talented, but that's very tough to come back from because the court of public opinion sucks to try and break. Yeah, it sucks to try and break. Jay, it's been an hour and a half of fun, man. Let the people know where they can find you.
You know to find me, Unfair Sports. Search for me on YouTube as well as wherever podcasts are downloaded and listened to. If you want to hear the OU content, I have a new feed for OU for my streams for the podcast. It's Sooner or Later Sports. Search for me wherever podcasts download, listen to, and you'll find us. Thanks for having me as usual, Ty.
Love it, love it, love it. RJ, if you're available Friday, I'll text you. I'd love to get you on. We'll figure all that out. Jay, as always, thank you so much. When did you say you'd leave again? It's in the coming weeks, right?
I leave on Tuesday. I'm going to take myself a vacay. So I'm going to have a whole bunch of content spread out over the next week and some change. And yeah, it's going to be some fun stuff. We're going to do some profiles on some upcoming players, as well as some profiles on some players that we're recruiting. Just, you're going to talk, have some fun, keep your eyes open for that. And we'll see it all down the line.
There you go. Well, y'all be on the lookout for that. If you want to know where you can find me after this, I'll be on Jason's stream, Hall of Fame Sports. Be talking over there. After the Hall of Fame podcast, you can catch me on the Bama Standard. 3 live streams this evening. We're going. Let's get it
working.
All right, y'all. We'll catch y'all Friday, 5:30 Central Standard Time. Until then, that's it. See you.
And be good.
Have fun with